Welcome to Things You Don't Know. Today, we're decoding some four-letter words that have a big impact on our lives. And no, I'm not talking about the F word or the any other four-letter swear kind of words. We're talking FOMO, that's FOMO, YOLO, YOLO, JOLO, JOLO, and digital burnout. That's not necessarily a four-letter word, though, is it? But we're going to include it anyhow. What they mean, we're going to explain that and how they shape our mental health here in 2025. Now, teens use these terms. Parents hear them and wonder. And all of us feel them in different ways. We'll explore each one in a mix of conversation and information. Ready? Let's dive in. How about it, Chandler?
Let's do it. So, picture this. It's midnight and you're scrolling through Instagram or TikTok. Suddenly, you see posts of your friends at a party that you weren't invited to. That little pang in your chest, the million thoughts racing. Why didn't they include me? What am I missing here? That is FOMO, my friends. The fear of missing out. But on the flip side, maybe you've told yourself YOLO as an excuse to do something crazy. You only live once, right? And then there's JOLO, the joy of missing out, sometimes called JOMO, the joy of missing out. And yes, apparently missing out can be joyful sometimes. And finally, all this constant connection can lead to digital burnout, where you're just exhausted by the online world. These concepts might sound like slang or trends, but they play a real role in our mental well being. Let's break them down one by one.
First up, FOMO, fear of missing out. We all experience it at some point. It's that anxious feeling that something exciting or interesting is happening somewhere and you're not there. In our always online world, FOMO has become super common. In fact, surveys show that about 56% of social media users admit to experiencing FOMO regularly. And it's even higher among young adults. Roughly 69% of millennials say they feel FOMO all the time. So if you catch yourself worrying that you're missing the party, you're definitely not alone.
Social media is FOMO's best friend or worst enemy. I mean, think about it. We have 24/7 access to everyone else's highlight reels, vacation pics, concert videos, and even that amazing meal that someone had. And it can feel sometimes like we can't escape seeing what some others are up to. That comes from healthclevelandclinic.org. Our brains then start comparing. Wow, they're having so much fun. What about me? This constant comparison can really mess with their heads. Studies have linked heavy social media use, which fuels FOMO, to higher anxiety and even worsening depression symptoms over time. And that also comes from healthclevelandclinic.org. It makes sense when you're constantly seeing what you're missing. You might start feeling inadequate or sad. You might even feel jealous. Ah, I wish I were on that trip, or even feel lonely. Everyone's having fun without me, or just plain stressed about trying to keep up.
Indeed. Here's an interesting tidbit. FOMO isn't entirely new. Now, your parents might know it as keeping up with the Joneses, that old urge to match your neighbor's life.
Oh, yes, I've heard older family members of mine use that term plenty of times.
The difference now is we carry the quote Joneses in our pockets. on our phones all day long. And the effects are tangible. For example, one study found that people who just lurk on social media, only watching others' posts without interacting, ended up feeling more left out and depressed. FOMO can also hit in other parts of life. Maybe a student feels FOMO seeing classmates join a club, or a professional feels FOMO hearing about a networking event they missed. It's basically a form of anxiety that you're not where the action is.
And get this, FOMO can even affect us at work. Recent research in 2024 identified FOMO as a key risk factor for mental health and burnout on the job. That comes from ScienceDaily.com. Employees who are constantly worried about missing important emails or updates and drowning in information overload are more likely to report high stress and eventual burnout. And that also comes from ScienceDaily.com. So, FOMO isn't just harmless slang. It can contribute to real anxiety, lower self-esteem, and even higher exhaustion.
So, what can we do about FOMO? We'll get into some antidotes in a minute. Hello, JOLO. But one strategy is remembering that what we see online is usually the highlight reel of others' lives. As one article put it, we see only the glossy icing on others' cakes, not the bland layers underneath. Now, everyone has some down moments. They just don't post them. Or sometimes they do in a different way, but that's another topic. Keeping that in mind can help take the sting out of FOMO. Now, sometimes people deal with FOMO by deciding to just jump into everything, which leads us to our next acronym.
YOLO, meaning you only live once. We've all heard it, right? YOLO is like the battle cry for spontaneity. Your friend wants to try some kind of ridiculous stunt on his skateboard and yells, YOLO! before doing it. Or you're debating whether to buy that pricey concert ticket and you think, ah, YOLO, I'll go for it. The phrase really blew up around 2011 thanks to rapper Drake shouting it out in a hit song. It basically means life is short, so just take the chance. YOLO is the opposite of FOMO's worry. Instead of, oh no, I'm missing out, YOLO says, oh, I better not miss out. Let's do this now.
Now, YOLO can be fun and empowering. It pushes us out of our comfort zones. Teens might use it to justify some wacky adventures, and sometimes that leads to great memories. Even parents and adults get the YOLO bug, like a mom deciding to go skydiving for her 50th birthday, or a dad who quits his boring job to start that bakery he's always dreamed of. All under the motto, you only live once. In a way, YOLO is about living to the fullest, not holding back. It's a modern spin on carpe diem, which means seize the day.
But, yes, you did know a but was coming. YOLO has a risky side also. If FOMO makes you anxious by comparison, YOLO can make you impulsive. We've seen people use YOLO as an excuse to do some pretty dangerous stuff. One mental health article noted that this YOLO attitude and similar teen slang can actually encourage risky choices in adolescence, like experimenting with drugs or unsafe behaviors. For example, Russian roulette. And that is a very dangerous game, which is a whole nother story. But the idea of a screw it, you only live once might lead somebody to ignore consequences. So, why YOLO can be motivating, it can also be a slippery slope if you throw all caution to the wind.
YOLO isn't just a teen thing either. It went mainstream after the pandemic. We all remember the pandemic, right? Do you remember hearing about the great resignation? Hmm. What it is in 2021, a record 47.8 million Americans quit their jobs. Yep, nearly 48 million people said, I'm done in 1 year. A lot of them were seeking something new, a passion project, a less stressful life, more meaning. This movement got nicknamed the YOLO economy because so many folks, especially millennials, decided to take a leap, figuring you only live once, why stay in an unfulfilling job? In fact, a global survey by Microsoft that year found that over 40% of workers worldwide were thinking about leaving their jobs to pursue other opportunities. Even people who used to play it safe were suddenly embracing the YOLO mindset and taking big risks with their careers.
Now, from a mental health perspective, there are two sides to this YOLO surge. On one hand, it was driven by people reevaluating priorities after going through COVID 19. Many felt burned out or realized what truly mattered to them. Quitting a toxic job or finally doing what you love can certainly boost your mental well being and happiness. It's like a positive YOLO. Don't postpone joy or self care. But on the other hand, impulsive YOLO decisions can backfire. If someone spends all their savings on a whim or takes a dangerous leap because YOLO, the stress that can follow afterwards can hurt their mental health. For example, going into debt for constant YOLO purchases might lead to some serious anxiety later down the road. A healthy YOLO approach means seizing the day within reason. Basically, yes, live your life, but just don't set it on fire. You only live once, so ideally, we want to lengthen that life and fill it with meaningful experiences, not cut it short or make it miserable with reckless choices.
If FOMO is fear that holds us back, and YOLO is the urge that pushes us forward, where's the balance? This is where our next term comes in, a way to embrace missing out rather than fear it. Let's talk about JOLO.
JOLO, which I would like to add, is also called JOMO, the joy of missing out. And yes, believe it or not, there is joy in missing out, and we can use those two interchangeably. It's the contentment that comes from intentionally skipping out on what others are doing and being totally okay with it. Maybe you're even happy about it.
Imagine your friends are all going to a big, loud concert tonight, but you've had a long week and you decide to stay home, take a warm bath, read a book, maybe watch TV, listen to some music, and you love it. No regret, no anxiety about the concert, just pure relief and joy that you're cozy and at peace. That's Jolo Jomo in action. It's choosing solitude or a slower pace and finding joy there instead of constantly comparing or trying to do everything. In a world where we're always connected, discovering the joy of missing out can actually be a healthy relief. In fact, occasionally disconnecting from social media and the hustle and bustle not only feels good, it can benefit your mental health by reducing stress and letting you recharge.
Now, Jolo Jomo has been promoted as the antidote. to FOMO. There are articles and experts encouraging people to embrace JOMO for the sake of sanity. Some positive things happen when you just stop worrying about missing out. You start living in the moment more and appreciating where you are right now instead of where you could be. You might stop the unhealthy comparisons and be more focused on your life and goals. Like, who cares if your friend's at a party? You're using this time to get better at painting or just rest, and that's making you better. Even boredom can be a good thing. One benefit of JOLO JOMO is that if you put the phone down and let yourself be bored, that boredom can spark creativity, or it could even lead you to try new activities that you actually enjoy doing. It's hard to discover those new interests if you're never missing out on the constant stream of online entertainment.
Yeah, we have to put in another but, of course. There's something you don't often hear. Not everyone who claims JOMO is truly joyful. A 2023 study found that most people who ranked high on the joy of missing out also had high levels of social anxiety. Wait. What? What? Well, basically, some people were avoiding social events not only because they were enlightened or zen about it, but because they were afraid of social interaction. So their joy of missing out was partly relief from anxiety. The researchers even dug a little deeper to find a group of folks who genuinely enjoy missing out without the anxiety, and they did find some, but it was a pretty small slice, around 10% of the study group. And even those people, while not anxious, did feel a bit lonely at times.
If you're skipping a party because you need some quiet self-care time and you're happy about that choice, then that's really healthy, JOLO. You'll likely emerge refreshed and more content. But if you're just skipping the party only because you're just too scared or that you feel that you wouldn't fit in, and then you say, "Oh, I just prefer missing out," then that might be avoidance wearing a mask of JOLO JOMO. But in the long run, avoiding things out of fear can even deepen loneliness and anxiety. So JOLO JOMO works best when it's a mindset or a choice for well-being and not an excuse to hide from everyday
Yeah,
life.
the mindfulness is very important here. One of the things that does happen is when you take the time out to be with yourself, your creativity soars. And that's very important. For myself, I don't really want to be the second dog in a dog sled team because guess what? The view is not very good. All you see is the butt of the dog in front of you. So we should also mention that everyone enjoying missing out doesn't mean you always isolate yourself. It's about finding a balance where you're comfortable doing your own thing and not constantly glued and sucked into the social feed. It's giving yourself permission to sometimes say no to invitations and not feel guilty. As one wellness piece put it, all you have to do is resist the fear, relax, and enjoy not knowing what's going on every second of every day. That can be a joyful feeling and a powerful way to cut stress. In a sense, JOMO is about trusting that it's okay to miss some experiences. You're still complete without being everywhere and seeing everything.
Now, we've talked about FOMO, the anxiety, YOLO, the impulsivity, and JOLO JOMO, the chill. all these concepts are super relevant to life in 2025 because so much of our life is online and hyperconnected, which brings us to digital burnout, the not so fun result of being a little bit too connected for too long.
Have you ever closed your laptop or shut down your computer at the end of the day and felt like your brain was fried, or felt strangely exhausted after hours of scrolling your phone, even though you were just sitting there? That could be digital burnout. The digital burnout is a state of mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion resulting from too much screen time and constant digital engagement. It's like your mind just gets burned out from the emails, notifications, Zoom calls, texts, the never ending stream of digital input.
Burnout itself is a well-known issue. The World Health Organization even recognized burnout as a workplace phenomenon, defining it as a syndrome of chronic stress with symptoms like feeling depleted, mentally distant, or cynical about your job, and less effective at work. And that comes from McLeanHospital.org. Now add the digital element to this thing. Since we're online so much, burnout can hit even outside work. For example, being glued to news updates and social media can exhaust us emotionally, and sometimes we call it information overload. And some of us can probably relate after the past few years of pandemic, remote school, and remote work. You wake up and immediately you're looking at a screen and it continues all day long. And by evening, you just feel done.
Yeah, I really can relate to that.
Me too.
There are some striking statistics on this. A survey of over 1,000 office workers found that 87% of them spent about 7 hours a day staring at screens. And more than half of them reported feeling fatigue or even depression as a result of this digital overload. That was a few years ago, and the trend hasn't slowed down. If anything, by 2025, we're even more connected. Recent studies estimate that 20 to 30% of adults in developed countries are afflicted or affected by digital burnout, and the rates are even higher for younger people. In some surveys of college students, up to 40% say they've experienced digital burnout symptoms, which is pretty alarming when you think about how many teens and young adults basically live on their devices for school, socializing, entertainment, basically everything.
So, what exactly does digital burnout feel like? It's not just being tired, it can show up as anxiety, irritability, and lack of motivation. You might have trouble concentrating, or you feel cynical about your tasks. Physical signs can include headaches, poor sleep, maybe even eye strain or headaches from all that screen glare. Cannot relate. But one expert described digital burnout as having symptoms like exhaustion, anxiety, and a diminished interest in work or activities because of too much tech use. And that comes from McLeanHospital.org. It just creeps up on you. At first, you're just a little bit tired and you don't disconnect, but then it gets worse. And then you find yourself drained and dreading that next notification or email.
One big factor in digital burnout is how it messes with our sleep and stress levels. Studies show that using screens right before bed, say scrolling TikTok at midnight, can really disrupt your sleep, which in turn makes you more vulnerable to anxiety and low mood the next day. It's a vicious cycle. You're tired and stressed, so you mindlessly scroll for a dopamine hit, but that keeps your brain wired and your sleep shallow. So you end up even more tired and stressed. And of course, during the day, many of us feel like we can't unplug. There's this pressure to respond to work messages or to stay on top of the latest news. A psychologist noted a lot of us worry about missing something important, which feeds this urge to continually check our feeds or inboxes. There's that fear of missing out again, lurking behind burnout.
Indeed. So FOMO and digital burnout, they're actually connected in a nasty little loop. You fear of missing out on emails or social updates, so you stay online constantly. But being online constantly overwhelms you and burns you out, which can make you anxious and really prone to FOMO because you're too drained to actually go do things in real life. See the trap there? Part of breaking that cycle, though, is giving ourselves permission to take breaks, which is where a little JOLO JOMO can help counteract some burnout. When you deliberately miss out on the non-stop streams and let your mind rest, then you recharge your mental batteries and reduce that burnout risk. Employers and schools are starting to even recognize this, and they're encouraging people to set boundaries like no emails after 7 p.m. rules or mental health days to prevent burnout, which I think, in my opinion, provides a better work and school environment for all involved. The World Health Organization included burnout in its classification was a wake-up call that this is a real live health issue, not just people whining. And this comes from McLeanHospital.org.
The good news is that awareness of digital burnout is growing, and so are solutions. Simple things like scheduling screen free time, using apps to limit your social media use, or practicing mindfulness can help. Some people do a digital detox on weekends. No social media, no work emails, just to reset. And remember, if you think about it, you are in control of your devices, not the other way around. It's okay to mute that group chat or log off Twitter for a day. The world will still turn without you, I promise. We've covered a lot, so let's put it all together briefly here. FOMO, JOLO, YOLO, and digital burnout, four modern terms that show how our digital life and real life feelings are intertwined. FOMO, fear of missing out, reminds us that humans are social. We hate feeling left out. But if we chase others' lives too much, we hurt our own happiness. YOLO reminds us life is short and meant to be lived fully. That's a really great sentiment, as long as we use it to enrich life and not as an excuse for recklessness. JOMO, the joy of missing out, reminds us that it's okay not to be everywhere doing everything. Sometimes the best thing is for our mental health is to slow down and enjoy exactly where we are, missing all the quote cool stuff and feeling fine with it. And digital burnout is the reality check. If you don't find balance with all this, our mind and body will wave the white flag, so to speak. Burnout is like your brain saying, I can't handle this constant engagement anymore.
And that is the breaking point. And for teens, parents, and anyone else who's listening, the lesson here is balance and self awareness. If you notice that FOMO is making you anxious, remember to just step back and practice a little JOLO JOMO. Put the phone down and be present in your own life. If you feel your urge to YOLO your way into every trend or challenge, that's awesome. Embrace it, embrace life, but also think about tomorrow and take care of yourself. And if you're feeling signs of digital burnout, then that is a cue to recharge and plug offline.
Mental health in 2025 is deeply connected to how we use technology and how we respond to these feelings. The acronyms might sound trendy, but the feelings are real and common. By understanding them, we can make better choices. Maybe that means scheduling a regular no social media Sunday to get back some of the joy of missing out. Maybe it means when FOMO strikes, you remind yourself that missing one party isn't the end of the world. There will be others. Maybe it's noticing when you're about to shout YOLO and asking, is this safe and good for me, or will I really regret it? It might even mean talking openly with friends or family about these feelings. Chances are they've felt the same way.
Well, Dr. Weaver, as I said before, I believe I have heard several members of my family, my mother included, use the expression keeping up with the Joneses several times. But the bottom line is, yes, you only live once. So take care of that one life by not running yourself ragged. Sometimes it's great to seize the day, and other times it's great to just let the day pass and just relax. Find that mix of plugging in and unplugging. You'll miss out on some things for sure, and that's okay. That is life. As the saying goes, missing out is in. It's healthy. Let go. By letting go of FOMO and embracing a little bit of JOLO JOMO, you might find a little bit that you're actually happier, connected to what truly matters.
Well, look, that's all for today's episode of Things You Don't Know. Hopefully, you've learned something new about these little acronyms and how they reflect big parts of our lives. If you enjoyed this and don't want to miss out on future episodes, see what I did there?
Oh, I like that.
Be sure to subscribe. And if you're listening with family, maybe spark a conversation about JOMO or burnout tonight. You might be surprised how everyone has a story. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, remember, you're not missing out if you're taking care of yourself. Stay well, both online and off.
And remember, you only go around once in life, so make it a healthy go around.